Good evening, all. Welcome to the Growth Planning Committee's meeting for August 18th, 2026. And we'll start off an introduction of members and guests.
Tom Smith.
Jane Evelyn.
Paul Hogan.
Dan Saunders.
Liz Johnson.
Anne Marie Martin.
Mary Beth Gilbert, Select Board Member.
Good evening, Ben Averill, support staff.
Nadia Crockett, current support staff.
Excellent. And we do have one guest. So thank you. So wonderful. There's plenty of other seats if someone wants to come down and join us. So really what the purpose of tonight's meeting will be to review the draft language for the historic district overlay. So I will ask you guys to bring it up. I saw there was comments there. I added a few today during lunch. So
Dave, will you bring up the projector?
While that's booting up, thank you everyone for all your comments. It was very helpful to have everybody leave comments on the draft. I think there was some good discussion within the comments, and I think there's some good discussion that we'll hopefully have tonight. I think to me, it's probably easier to go just down the document and talk about either where we went as staff and then some of the strikeouts that you'll see or changes that the committee has gone through. And then we can address some of the comments on the right. And I didn't preface this when we sent out the information out to the committee, but some of the comments were purposefully put there so that we could talk about things tonight. Sure. I think you all mostly figured that out as you were looking through the document. But this is our first stab at the historic overlay zoning district. Just as a background, this is something that we've been talking about here in the committee for a couple of meetings, and it came about as part of a conversation with the joint select board and committee meeting back in June. So the historic overlay district would be, is it easier for the committee if we read line by line or where there's additions or strikeouts, or do you just want to talk about the strikeouts and the additions?
yeah, I think we can go through line by line.
Perfect. So I'll read it as is amended right now.
Okay.
And then if we have questions on anything, then we can move forward if that works for the committee.
That works fine.
So the purpose of the historic overlay district is to maintain the overall visual character of those areas in town with a significant number of properties of historical significance by managing the development within these areas. This performance standard is designed to assure that the significance, that the alteration, expansion, or replacement of contributing properties of historical significance or the construction, alteration, or expansion of non-contributing properties located within the district is carried out in a manner that is compatible with and maintains the essential character of the contributing properties and the overall in the district. And we can fix that end if we need to. The intent is to preserve the unique architectural values and character of both districts, the Kennebunkport Historic District and the Cape Arundel Summer Colony Historic District. And some of the parts of that purpose statement were amended through the committee's work remotely on this document. I had one thought, and I'm going to let Nadia caught up. So I didn't go in to see where thought processes or who had made some amendments, but I was wondering if a committee member felt comfortable talking about the portion that was added by managing development within these areas.
Yeah, so I made all those amendments.
Perfect.
So, yeah, I didn't spend the time out there. We talk about it. So I was trying to just, the sentences seemed a little long, so I was trying to break it down into steps. And the first being, I mean, the purpose is really the whole visual thing. That's what we're gonna be talking about, is that it's visual. So that's why I just wanted to kind of focus on that as in the first section, and the fact that there are historical significant properties. Managing the development was this word I came up with, because that's how we're trying to handle what's gonna happen in that location, right? Without being overly prescriptive. And it's certainly part of how do we, because many of these are located, well, some of it's located in a growth area, so how do we manage that with the changes that we know are coming from the state, or have come from the state that we have to. The rest, I think, was pretty much what was there. I just kind of moved some sentences around, right?
Yeah, to me, I like when I read it, the development thing was, it's sort of like originally struck me as a different
Yeah, I mean, we could-
meaning. Like I didn't know if there was a different word versus development.
well, the
'Cause
bottom said this purpose section is to manage development and redevelopment. So I just wanted
yeah,
to talk
yeah,
about.
I
right? So,
think the development part was,
but at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do, right? I mean, they're there already. So it's, if something's gonna change, we manage how that's being changed.
so I think
So-
to some people, development might mean either quantity or setbacks, or, that versus the characteristics that we're trying to get to, which is the look and feel. So that's why development to me felt like, it's
Yeah.
that little step too far. It just was that one word out of everything just sort of.
What do you suggest for a change? Because
Why
is it a step too far?
Because of what development infers or could infer without,
Yeah.
development infers that it goes basically to our full design standards, right? So you do setbacks, you do something, and we have said from the beginning that this was a look and feel that we were trying to contain. We weren't overstepping, LD 1829. We weren't overstepping any of the growth initiatives. We were just trying to maintain in that boundary. So by managing the, potential changes within these
we'll
areas.
say that, managing
know.
the change.
Yeah.
Or we could define development within the document.
Well, development's a tough one because I think that's where we can keep it and go to the board and discuss it and then go to legal. But I think this is where legal might have a
I
problem
think
with that word.
to manage change
Yeah.
is better. It's more neutral. Development sounds like, oh, we're trying to encourage
Right.
this to become something it isn't.
Or that there's going to be parameters, quantity of homes or whatever, and that's not the intent here.
Wait, I
Is it,
thought part of the reason we were doing this is to enable these areas to not have to abide by the new state changes.
I don't think we can do that because we can't put those barriers in place, but we can manage what goes there
Like, I
to a
thought
degree,
we
right?
had sort of concluded just amongst ourselves, not in writing, that we thought we didn't want to allow one of these big homes to be torn down and put four there, even if they look
right.
old.
And that's why we need the design standards to manage and guide whatever happens there, as opposed to now, it's free for all.
Right.
Subject, with just, you got side yards and
Yeah,
the other setbacks, but if there is going to be change, this is how it's going to happen.
I don't think this precludes a big house being torn down
Right.
and 4 units. To Liz's point, this doesn't preclude that. This allows that still to happen per the state requirements, but we are taking hold of what it can look and feel like.
right.
So Lord Mansion comes
So
down,
we can't say that
no,
we won't let that happen in these areas.
So, I believe that we would still need to allow whatever provisions are within the state housing requirements to play out, and this would be in addition to that. And so I apologize that there's not page numbers on this. We'll make sure that we add page numbers next time. But as we move through this document on page 5, I had highlighted in green a provision that isn't going to probably live in this section, but was pertinent to what this is as a zoning district, which is it's an overlay zoning district, meaning the uses and the dimensional standards that exist underneath that layer. In this case, in various zoning districts that are within our growth area would still have those density requirements and those dimensional requirements and those allowed use typologies. This would just be an overlay district that would be effectively on top of it. That would have design or character features, particularly around historic structures in those zoning districts.
Right,
Oh.
that was my understanding, that they could still come in and put 4 units in an accessory apartment on
Oh,
the.
what- I thought there was,
Lot.
I thought there was something about instead of 5,000 square feet, it was 10,000 square feet. What was that in reference to?
We'll get into all of the density stuff maybe after this in terms of where we need to go for LD 2173 provisions. But the bulk of the historic overlay district would be having the most dense parameters because it's within our growth area and it's in areas that have water and sewer capabilities. And we'll talk maybe a little bit tonight about what that could look like, or at least we'll I'll give an update for you and give you some timeline things to think about as we start to figure out what those standards should look like throughout town, not just in the historic districts.
Is there a reason in the first sentence, I read the first sentence and I'm thinking, oh, well, so this could apply to Goose Rocks. There's a lot of historic homes out there. And then you have to get through it to find out it's only talking about these 2 districts. So my question is just is there a reason not in the first sentence by managing change within the Kennebunkport Historic District and the Cape Arundel Summer Colony Historic District, period?
The only instance where you may want to keep the wording a little bit more vague would be if we were ever to decide as a either as a community or to have someone prep a National Historic Register application to add new historic districts.
So we amend.
Yeah, I think it might be good to set the tone, set the parameters of the areas that we're talking about.
I think it's
Yeah,
sort
it's
of
just logical in terms of you're starting here and this is within this. zone. I get your point.
Yeah.
But it might be better just to start off with the logical. And then to Jane's point, just remember, when we had our joint meetings with the rest of the select board, this is why we went down, this is why the ask was for the historical, for something in the historical district, because that was a tool that we had in our toolbox. We knew we couldn't, we knew when we had that meeting and Rep. Gare was with us that there was nothing we could do within this current district, within our growth area. This is how our growth area is defined. This, we said we weren't going to open the comp plan up, so we went around out, and this was the last tool we had, which was to try to at least preserve the look and feel. We weren't going to stop, one house becoming 4.
But I thought a part of this, doing this project, part of the reason for doing this was to reduce the density by allowing the 4 units within a 10,000 square foot area rather than a 5,000.
It could result in that if they can't do it on that lot.
But that's a one-off. So the state law has a requirement for density, right, on a certain lot size. And then like to Ben's department, then they come in with the normal setbacks that the state allows us to still keep. And whatever else the state allows us to keep in, and then that will set off on how many actual units they can put on that. So it'll be a case by case basis, given the setbacks, but there's nothing right now within the historic, what we're trying to achieve here or what the town has in our toolbox to stop or amend the overarching LD 1829 density requirement.
But if we do move forward with crafting these, this historic overlay zoning district and whatever standards are within that district, then it would dictate the look and the feel and the character of new structures or changes to structures within the two historic districts. And it may, one thing that this process, our ordinance drafting process doesn't talk about, but is certainly on the front of my mind as we move through this as staff, is it would add that potential barrier for permitting processes for new development within those districts. So that's that measure of control, that additional permitting process, the additional thought process around how structures are changed or added within the district that we're hoping to obtain by going through this.
So eyeballs, basically you have eyeballs on what's happening versus if we didn't have this overlay, things could just happen without any planning board eyeballs on it because it ticked off all the right boxes and it didn't need it. It didn't need a planning board review. This will force it through anything that's touched the significance of this area will be forced into a planning board review now.
Better than nothing.
I mean, we're trying for what we
Yeah,
have, right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
So can we modify, I like the idea of doing this once and not have to amend it again. Can we modify this so we don't reference the specific districts, but just say the historic overlay districts that are what those are, registry, National Registry, whatever their current title is. So if we add another one, it's day one, it's automatically covered. It doesn't have to wait for us to make an amendment and get a vote of the voters.
Yes and no, and the answer I'm going to give you is probably not going to be the most straightforward, but because it's a zoning district, even if it's an overlay zoning district, we will have to define what the district bounds are, no different than how we define other zoning districts and where they start and end. So if we decided to either add 2 more parcels somewhere adjacent to the historic districts that exist, or created a whole new historic district across town and wanted that to be part of the overlay zoning district, we would still need to come back and amend the ordinance in whatever time period that was to add those boundaries of new parcels being added. So you don't end up gaining anything if you strike things out.
If you try to make it more general,
Yeah.
right?
All right.
Who knew?
I don't want to get in the way.
You have to ask you to use the mic.
I
Thank
don't want
you.
to get in the way of your discussion. I really just wanted to listen, but just some food for thought. When I was looking, in the historic district. I'm right next to the post office, the White House that was renovated about 5 years ago. So I was looking at lot size and all that, and I hear a lot of 4 units versus 4 homes. Most of the lots that are in the historic district are 0.3 of an acre or less. If you looked at my lot, nobody's going to come in and tear, I'm not saying you don't need to do this, but nobody's going to come in and tear down our house that was just renovated and lose the value of the house. They'd be more apt to put 4 units, break the house apart into 4 apartments. Many of the houses, we've kind of got this critical mass going where there have been many houses that have been beautifully renovated. They're not going to go in and tear down the $4 million house on Main Street and put up 4 places. I don't think you could even put up 4 units on something that's less than 0.3 because there's distances between buildings that you have to have, and then you've got the parking space and all that. So I see the challenge here more as controlling, if you want to try to control what they might do with the building. Or there are a few large lots, but most every lot is consumed by a house, and many of them have already been beautifully done. I respect all that you're doing. My other point to make, though, is I think the way to keep these changes from happening is to keep developers from wanting to come here and do it. The way you do that is you get residents that continue to want to live here. I would never have bought my house if there was anything like this. It's the first thing I looked into when I was looking at the house, loved my home, would love it here. But if the first thing I did was, is there something like this at Kennebunkport? And I made sure there wasn't, didn't even wait a second day. If there had been, I would never have bought the house. So my opinion, just my opinion, is if you have something like this, it depreciates values because you have fewer buyers. It's documented that when you have overlay districts, you've got people that love the place, but a lot of people don't want to bother with it. If I wanted to do something, I'd say it increases escrow time because you've got to find out and understand what it is. If you don't have as many buyers, then the price goes down. A developer that can come in that has a legal person on staff, they have an architect on staff, they've dealt with it before, they know, they look at it and they go, I can do this, and I can get it through the board this way. So my take would be to continue to try to encourage people that want to live in the homes. So if this goes in, I think even though I bought it, I'm concerned that it will decrease the value and I'll have a harder time selling it because people don't like the restrictions. And we know historically that this has not been popular. This was turned down multiple times. So I'm surprised there's been some discussion about people wanting this because this has been very loudly turned down. But anyway, that's just my thought is what you're dealing with in the historic district. I think you've kind of turned the corner. One of the best things that might have happened was what they did with Captain Morgan Mansion and things that might have not have been popular at the time, but it let people go into the buildings, wander around the places. We've got a lot of renovations that have happened. That house that's on Upper North Street that just got redone, they bought it for $1 million. It's now tax appraised at $5 million. We don't want to not let people into the town because prices are getting high, but high prices are what's going to keep developers out. They're not going to want to buy a $5 million house and tear it down and put up 4 places. So that's just, I'll have maybe some thoughts on this too, but that was just something that I wanted to try to convey and have people think about. Very, very small lot sizes in this historic district, with the exception of a couple that are open, very small lot size. There are some that are 0.1.
So,
Good.
so the reason this has come up, despite the history, is that the state has changed the rules about lot size and density. And so now we cannot limit the density to other than what the state has told us
Right.
we have to do. So
Don't you still have to follow guidelines for For
side yards
space.
and,
side yards, front
Yes.
yards, and 20%? So in my house, you couldn't put 4 separate units. And most of the lots are so small that if you do the math, 4 separate buildings.
But-
So that was the point I wanted to make, is that most of these lots are so tiny that it's not even feasible to get 4 separate buildings and meet fire codes and have a place for parking. I'm concerned about the density too. I'm concerned about having 4 cars in my yard, 8 trash cans outside
Sure.
somewhere, all of
Right.
that.
Right.
But I think we should do everything we can to try to keep things from getting ugly. But I think we're in a good place as far as the more renovations that happen, the more money that's put into the town, the less developers going to come in. And if you have things like this, my opinion is that this makes a fewer group of people that might want to buy the place, which therefore brings the value down. And that can leave the opportunity for a commercial person to sit after this.
Yeah, definitely appreciate the feedback, because what we're trying to do is walk that fine line between, the perfect 1 acre lot that could now become 40 units
Yes,
based on what this, plus an additional 8, I think, accessory apartment. So that could be detached from having that happen. Other facts that we know about the town is more than half, or at least half the residents are not owned by folks that live here.
that's okay.
Many are, that's okay, but many are also owned by companies who really don't have the same value that you bring to your home that they bring to their property.
I
It's
don't
an
know that I
investment
agree with
property.
that last statement, Dan, because I think they're rentals. I think most properties in the historic district are pretty well kept up. And most of I only know of 1 lot. I didn't go through every single one, but I was kind of checking through the GIS thing. And the largest one was 0.78. It's got half of it is empty. It's up from Ryan's, that house that butts up against Ryan's, and half of the lot's empty. But everything else is tiny. I mean, I'm 0.28 and I'm one of the bigger lots. So it's not like you've got a town with 1 acre lots and they're going to come in and put 4 buildings on
Right.
it. And so many of them are in pretty good shape. I think even if You know, one of the houses that was due for restoration, the one I bought was way overdue for restoration. You know, maybe they tear it down, but I doubt they'd be able to put 4 separate buildings on it. So you get more into if you had 2 buildings, even if you think 4 separate buildings, one food for thought, we're going through this. Italianate, which is mine, it doesn't scale down to 4 small buildings. You know, they're 10-foot ceilings and they're tall and all the detail. Same with, your federal might scale down, but most of the styles that we have here don't scale down to a small building, so you'd probably be looking at federal or some, Cape. And even then, it would be tiny,
But that's what would come in.
yeah.
So that's what, we're not saying that it will be 4 large houses. We're saying it would be 4 smaller homes that could be potentially condo units. That would be, to Dan's point, not residential, but more, you know, summer homes, or not that there's anything wrong with that. So Janet, this was more to Dan's point. This was trying to thread that needle that Dan spoke about, walk that fine line, stay on the fence, whatever you want to use, to make sure that there is an incentive here now that we don't have on the books that's currently in here based on density, because it's in the growth area, because it's in the historical zone. And so then what could this become? And so this is just, we're trying to keep it light. We're not trying to be like other historical districts that this committee's reviewed, where there's, you know, very strict things on maintenance, you know, thou shall use this type of glass or whatever. So it is more of a look and feel sense. So for example, I would maybe even counter argue that this is here to, if somebody wants to buy into the port, this is actually a very light approach to keep that look and feel of the port versus having things go down in the historical districts and having some, you know, very modern, ultra modern house go up, and that's happened down at the beach. Two ultra moderns went up, you know, and it does change that sensation of look and feel. So I think that's what this is. So I guess I would look for your input to say, okay, they're trying to do a very light overlay. And would that stop people from buying in?
To go with the modern house, that's getting away though from the 4 units or 4 separate buildings. That's just, we don't want a modern house in the historic district. There's a really cool modern house that I like, but there's a third, the one that's right as you go up your road. It's the 1 bedroom. Are you familiar, any of you familiar with that? Right, as you go around the corner, it's on the right. It's a 1 bedroom home, $3 million. Nobody's gonna tear it down, but it's modern. I'm okay with the way that it looks. I don't think, can't promise anything, but I don't think anybody's gonna build a house like that in the historic district. Because your group has talked about how you don't buy here to come in and say, I'm gonna put in a modern house. You really want to force them not to be able to do that. And I just wanted to mention that there can be a downside to implementing something like
Right.
this.
There can be, but
It's,
I'm glad you're interested in this, because help keep us where we don't make it a downside, but we also
Right.
protect it from becoming, you know, a box with a flat roof. That's becomes next to your home, which would also detract from its value, right? So, and hopefully we can use this to at least protect those districts so that they do look like they do today
Yeah.
to some extent.
I mean, it's in Kennebunkport, right along Beach Ave. Where is it? Right before Mother's Beach.
Yes,
Beer Garden.
yeah.
And there's that big modern one there.
Yeah.
People would have assumed before the original house was torn down, oh, nobody's, you know, these are all cute little beach cottages. Nobody's gonna build some modern thing here.
Mhm.
Well, they did, and it sticks out like a sore thumb.
We know, throughout the comprehensive plan and in legislation at the state level, the term character is used.
yes.
And so trying to describe what character is basically what I see that we're trying
That
to
we're
do.
trying to do, yeah.
So now that if there's an argument sometime, and we're trying to anticipate if there could be an argument we could very clearly say, well, this is what we mean by character. And that's why we've stepped back from, even though we've rightfully had to discuss all elements of this, we have stepped back from saying, there's going to be 8 panes and this size of window and all this.
Yeah.
So, but for what why I'm supportive of this language is that if it comes up with, well, character is a nebulous concept, what do you mean? And now you've got an argument. But if you can say, these are our examples of character based on a comprehensive plan and updating that comprehensive plan, because in this world we're in right now, we made it to, I think, the front page of the Wall Street Journal for this is the place you want to buy property, the new Martha's Vineyard. And so for somebody, $3 million for a lot, that's still a buildable lot. They'll take whatever's off and put something on it. So that's the future. And I think that I really am interested in the language and with what you're saying, but it tells me how important an understanding of what character is in Kennebunkport.
Well, I would take that one step. So just building out what everybody just said and thinking through what's actually happening here. If we drive down Ocean Ave, we have the great, great houses with the big front porches. And then you go around past bushes and then you go, not that there's anything wrong, beautiful house, but it's ultra modern, sits back. And that's what's being built now. You go down to the beach and you look at Binnacle Hill. Binnacle Hill started off with more traditional New England looking homes. And then the current homes going up now are more of the modern, separate homes, or one home, but it has glass entranceways, so if we said, somebody's gonna, and we do get tear downs in the historical district, so that is a fact. So what would they build? Well, the architects today are looking at that. That's the design that's coming out right now. That doesn't quite fit into Anne Marie's litmus test of character of what, that wouldn't fit in the historical district. Right?
It's happening elsewhere. It's happening there. It's not happening in the historic district.
We can't hear you.
I'm sorry. It's happening there. It's not happening in the historic district. And I know you can't go on faith, but we're not seeing a trend toward putting modern houses in the historic district. I don't want to keep you from this. I think I made my point, and I understand. I've listened to all your videos, so I understand where you're coming from and the work you're trying to do.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make that
Yeah,
point.
no, that's
And just, again, the concern of this can push people away that might do what it is you really want to retain. And I'm not saying lightly, just I truly would never have considered buying here if this had existed. If it has to come to be, that's fine. I'm not moving anywhere, but I would not. I would have written it right off, even reading the first paragraph. It said, I don't know what I'm getting into. There's no review board. I don't know who's going to be on the review board, what their qualifications are. I don't know what I can and can't do. Gee, I want to tear down the garage. It's going to take me 2 months. The house might
It's
be
all-
sold by then.
It's the planning board is the review board.
Yeah.
We tried to make it simple. It's in here.
Right, but I have no idea. I have no idea what their qualifications are, if they're gonna give me a hard time. There's a mess of lawsuits going on in Kennebunk right now. Somebody wants to tear down a house. I don't
But
know.
so that's the thing that we were trying to, so this is a great conversation. And it's good, I think, like to Anne Marie's point, it's good to hear this. But that's what that's why that's why I believe the committee sort of walked away from, Kennebunk's plan is very strict, right? And they do have a committee. And so this is historical district light, this is, hey, we want you to look and feel a certain way. We don't want the long, big windows, if you're tearing down, so if you were going to come into the town and buy a historical home, a home in the a historical home right in the area, you would have to go, per the process to get a demo permit, anyways, right? So it's not a
Yeah, that exists today.
so you would have to go through that process anyways. I'm trying to think like, if somebody came in and they're like, okay, I want to take my garage down and build another one. And then they came into the planning board and they said, look, the garage is falling apart. I want to build another one. It could be as simple as, yeah, you know, follow the same lines or keep the same look and feel and you're golden. I think that's, to me, that's what this language says. If you think otherwise, it would be helpful to, as we go through it, to say, yeah, that doesn't read right. Because that's what we're trying to get to.
My take on that is if it's really detailed, it scares me away. If it's vague and light, it scares me. Because it's not telling me what I can do.
Okay.
That's just me. I would never do it with the other.
Can you speak it to the?
Can't hear
Yeah, we
you.
got it.
I'm sorry, that's what I would do. If it's vague, then it's open to interpretation
Okay.
by the people that are going to make the decision of whether I can or not. And I don't have time, if a house is on the market, to spend 2 months going to meetings and to find out. So I don't want to keep you anymore from getting through
Yeah,
this. I just wanted to put those ideas in your head for
Could I-
thought as we go through.
Let me
it.
raise a point, for me. I read this the other night. What came to mind was this first definition, architectural significance, possess high historic and artistic values. What came to mind was this god-awful building called Falling Water. You ever seen that, Frank Lloyd Wright?
Uh-huh.
It's boxy, ugly, but it's known worldwide in its art. So who decides what has high artistic value or high historic value? People could say Falling Water does. And you want people to come in and build a boxy house like that, concrete and glass, in the historic district of Kennebunkport. So unless we take things like this definition and put more meat on them, we could be open to interpretations of what historic value means or historic significance, artistic value.
Do we want to shift into that
Sure.
definition? Okay. I
So
had,
are we, we changed that one word? Yeah. So we got rid of development to, okay.
I'm glad you brought that up. I had purposely left several definitions highlighted with the intent of at least being a reminder for me if the conversation didn't shift to those to talk about it. So the architectural significance definition is generally it's in many ordinances that the committee looked at. It is much more straightforward if at some point in the future after this ordinance is adopted, a body of some kind, staff or a board or somebody else is able to go and determine which buildings meet that definition, what is actually significant and what isn't. And I left it in here because I think it's worth having that as a conversation. Our down farther in somewhere in the document, our current ordinance that is on the books, which is only for demo delay, only for removing a building, references 1930 as the historical standard. Theoretically, meaning something built in 1931 wouldn't have to go through the same standards. It references 1930 because that was the period of significance for the federal historic districts as they were established. But I think I quickly said this last meeting that the technical look back period for the historic preservation components in the National Historic Preservation Commission is 50 years. Meaning technically speaking, if you were to either redo those district boundaries today or to have never had them and to go through the process right now, that there would be structures from the 70s that would be considered historically accurate according to our new definition of history as time has progressed. And I think that's a big distinction as to whether if we are determining that there is significance to a time period, if we want to call that out. In my professional opinion, I've worked in municipalities that had a hybrid code like this that determined it was easier just to treat every property the same. They knew they were not going to have the staff capabilities or the time capabilities to go back and re-review all of the structures within the historic district. It was a plan in the comp plan, and it would be great to do it, but it was not something that they drafted the ordinance with the intention of actually going forward, and then they would come back and amend the ordinance if possible. So if you were to strike that completely, then it would mean any structure within, that falls within the bounds of the district would go through the same process. Whether that was a structure built in 1820 or 1720 or 1920 or 2020.
So when does a couple of the structures that we've talked about, we've referenced tonight, like down at the beach, and at Kennebunk Beach, the more modern structures, at what point do they become historic?
They're not in our historic district.
What's that?
They're not in our historic district.
Currently.
So again, I think if we spin outside of our boundary conditions, so our boundary conditions for here is the historic district, which happens to reside within our historic districts, which happens to reside in our growth areas, which happens to be part of this density growth plan, which could have the most change, right? So I think we were using the other houses as examples of current builds of what people are leaning towards when they're taking down houses and building now. But if we look at the boundary conditions of our historic district, then I think that's what we have to put the parameters on. So when I'm listening to what Ben was saying and thinking through it, do we want to put words in here, like going back, Anne-Marie mentions our comp plan, which we're a New England town, right? We're a New England fishing village, a New England port town. So, thinking what Janet had brought up, is it something where we start adding some language in here that say, the characteristics of a classic New England port town developed from 1643 to whatever the end date is that we want to be. And it is those types of look and feel of those houses. I think that's essentially, that is, I think, tangible, right? Because you can't say the falling water house of Frank Lloyd Wright is a New England, coastal town, a port town of that era. It is of that era, but it's not a New England port town. So because in our town, we have Federalists, we have Colonials, we have salt boxes, we have capes, we have a whole bunch of array, which can all be in there and should be in there, because we don't want a current development of all look and same feel. Right?
Maybe you can solve that by simply adding the words after historic values of a New England port town. That might do it.
Anne-Marie did some research, and this comes straight from the Maine State Legislature in 1971. Kennebunkport was incorporated in 1653. It is a quintessential New England fishing village. And then they keep describing it a little bit. It is essential that the architectural, historic, and environmental heritage of this area be preserved for future generations, as stated by the Maine State Legislature in 1971.
Right. So that was for our historic district proclamation.
What's that?
No, we know.
Yeah.
There was a lot else done here besides fishing.
Fishing wasn't done in the historic district.
Right.
Those done.
These are ship captains, these are
Right.
slave traders and all that stuff.
Houses are so grand. I think around out by Pier
Yeah.
Road, it's more the fishing. I just, since I've got the microphone, you could say, build your house in the style of one that's already existing there.
But that's
That's kind of
actually,
what it.
yeah, it is sort of, but then it also,
Thank you.
or build your house similar to what's on your street and in your neighborhood. right?
Hey,
So
Ben,
if you want to be a Federalist Society that's like 2 doors down from you, there's nothing that should stop you from being able to do that because you're the same look and feel of the town.
Well, the comprehensive plan has a series of photographs of, that were taken of the houses in the town, giving us an example. So that's always present for us to review.
Ben, I'm confused by the definition and where it's used in the document, because it seems like when you get down to the changes and what you have to do, it applies to everything in the district. There's no differentiation.
That's correct. I did not add the architectural significance into the ordinance itself because I wanted us to talk about it. But if we felt strongly that we wanted to have that, that would just be an easy kind of plug and play into the various aspects of the ordinance itself. And the one in my mind that was the cleanest was Freeport, but they had a separate section that classified contributing and non-contributing, and I think they called it class 1 and class 2 or something like that. But that's to meet that definition, that's the part that we would put in.
But I thought we kind of decided we weren't going to do that. We weren't going to go down that path because we were going to do this in a year and not 5 years, theoretically, because of the state law change. And we weren't going to have a committee make all those decisions about class 1 buildings or class 2 buildings. We were doing it generically.
Yeah.
I also was sort of wondering why the word artistic was in there. I think we're talking about historic. I'm not quite sure where artistic fits in to all of this.
What definition?
It's at the
okay.
second to last word.
Oh,
I certainly think if the decision was that it didn't make sense to classify significant versus non-significant, then we should strike that definition. And then, as I had mentioned, it would just be that all structures within the district would go through the same process.
Maybe.
and how does that work with the date later on? Down the bottom, there's the 1930 reference. What's the significance? I have to remember.
So that's what's currently in our ordinance, and
Oh, okay. I
we would
understand.
most likely strike that provision.
And it would be anything in the district.
Correct.
So, I mean, you do have newer builds within the district right now, right? Beyond, you would look at them and say, well, that's really doesn't have the Captain Lord Mansion feel or, a true New England port town feel, and yet they reside in the district. So for me, having, whether it's 1930 or some date, that plays into the point of we are going to be looking at houses of this, right? So those are the houses that we actually want to keep that look and feel. We do have salt and pepper in the historic district. But if we say, 1930 or call it 1950, wherever you want to draw the line, then to Paul's point, we don't have to have category 1 or 2 because we sort of created that by a shared definition of a date, which is very easy it's very easy for someone to know, oh, I'm looking at a house to buy and it's 1929. I fall into this zone. It's a federal style. I know that if I want to redo it, I'm going to have to follow the look and feel of a New England port town of this era. So that I understand what Ben's saying about the 1930 or 1930, but that might help us from further trying to classify anything, and it might give some houses, because now you're taking a house and making it go backwards. If there's a house in the historical district that truly isn't historical to our definition, now you're saying, no, if you're going to do anything, you're going to have to become historical. So I think that could be a
Well,
trap.
this is just, the 1930 just relates to the demo provision. It
Right.
doesn't relate to anything else.
Right. And my question is, would we relate that instead of doing classes, would we use that 1930 date as saying, or 1950 or whatever you want to make it, you know?
Why wouldn't we just, in the demo provision, it applies to everything in the district?
What if it's not a currently?
I mean, all the provision does is you give notice to the town, and if it's not of historical significance, nobody's going to give a damn. And no one's going to want to buy it in terms of public buyout or something like that. The neighbors would organize to find a way to save the house if it's a
So that,
split level
so
on
that's,
some
you're looking
street.
at the only for the permit for demo. I was thinking it for the broader thing of what houses would fall under this. So are we, so where's the decision tree for this process? Is it, I own a home in the historic district and it has some artistic characteristics of it, or I own a house in this district and it's before 1930, and now I have to follow these guidelines? Or is it every house in the historical district has to now have a look and feel if they want to do something of it, of this character? I don't know if it's keeping modern out, or is it keeping the balance of the town how we want to keep it now?
Yeah, and I think it's the district versus individual specific homes.
So-
Because you could have a situation where all the historical homes stay the same, but 50 years from now, 100 years from now, all the other homes are of a completely different look for whatever reason.
Right.
Right?
And you would have
That's if
defeated
you
your
go-
purpose.
That goes to the extreme, and then it sort of takes away from that look and feel that you would have.
Okay, so we're not going to cause a homeowner that has a 1970, I'm not saying they
Yeah.
exist, but a 1970 Brady Bunch house that happens to reside in our historical district, and they want to demo that and rebuild. What is this going to allow them to do? They have to go back to they have to go back to a federal
Well, they
estate.
certainly could build what they've had, because they're gonna look at, I think in here, we talk about 500 feet. And that, that number can change, but you're going 500 feet, east, 500 feet west, 500 feet north and south, and what do you see? And you may see another 1970 home, right, or a 1980 home. Right, so if it fits in with that, along with the historical homes that are there, then you can build it. If it's completely different, then you wouldn't be able to.
So then what we're saying
Or
is,
there'd be a discussion about how can you modify it so it does sort of fit this scape.
okay, so then what we're saying is that our historical light district is, we're taking at this point of this ordinance, we're taking a literal snapshot of our historical district. And future builds will provide us with the same look and feel. It may be more houses on a lot, it may be a higher house on a lot,
Sure.
but it will give us a look and feel when you drive down the street and there was a Brady Bunch house. There may be two Brady Bunch houses now, but it'll still give you that, I was here 20 years ago and town feels the same. So it's not, so it may not, our words then would be something like a New England.
But also, it also could mean if we did that, right, that you could take a historical home, and why you would do this, I have no idea, but you take a historical home, knock it down and turn it into a Brady Bunch home.
With that, whatever's
Right.
in 500 feet.
And maybe because you can get, 40 units built into it because of where it is and it's on an acre lot and all the rest. And now you could sell each one of those units for $1.5 million and you'll make more than them. That's the worry I have.
Nadia, can you scroll to page 4 where I had a note and you had a note on top of it? I didn't highlight this part, but it is highlighted. It's very softly highlighted from the comment, but I borrowed this from Bath's code, which you did not look at. And they just updated their code. They've added quite a bit of new standards, and I had a conversation with their assistant planner about it. But this is something that they've added to their code, which is trying to deal with, they also do not classify contributing or non-contributing. And they were trying to deal with this problem of what do you do if most of the structures around within that neighborhood or the near structures to a proposal to a project are different than the type of unit, the form, the construction that it is. And so they have added this within their code change that they just went through, which is meant to make it so that house that is built in, let's say, the 40s, but is within a neighborhood of Federalist style structures, doesn't have weird Federalist additions that are being forced onto it by the permitting process, that the structure has the ability to be its own structure and to retain its own character, not just morph into something that blends with the district, but doesn't signify its own natural occurring character of its own time period. They have not gone through any permitting with that code change yet, but it was an interesting conversation because they've been struggling with the same thought process.
So I got confused by this line when I read it. I thought it was like if you had a Brady style house, a Brady Bunch style house, and you're gonna put a second stall garage on it, that had to appear to be so the new additions to existing buildings must clearly be distinguishable and must not have falsely appear to be authentic. So that the words were just, it was like too many words. I couldn't understand what they were trying to say. So if I have a Brady style house, I have got a 1-car garage, I'm going to build a second one. So does that mean the second car garage must not look like it was built when the original house was built, and it has to look like a an
Yeah.
add-on? But that's like.
That's how I read that.
That's how I read it.
Yeah, me too.
And I'm like, I'm okay with that if it's built the same.
Yeah, I'm actually wanted
So
to
I'm not-
look the same.
Yeah.
I'm trying
Yeah.
to trying to understand what them, they must have run into some problem, which I don't quite understand. That they felt they needed to add this.
Yeah, so the words here make it sound
Yeah.
like you wouldn't allow them to make the addition blend in with the house.
And I think that they have added it because there were some, I think he called it Frankenstein additions that were trying to take multiple styles of periods and put them all into the same addition or renovation of a structure.
I mean, first and foremost, if you're gonna put an addition on your home, you want it to look like your home, right? Generally, I would expect that's what people are gonna do. So to me, any home, anywhere, if you do that, that's fine, right?
Well, I
You know, we
think,
could add some things in there that make sure that we do have a peak roof, right? 'Cause, I mean, flat roofs really aren't really good for
So
their main anyways. but-
the one thing I would change, so new additions to existing buildings must not falsely appear to be an authentic original. So, yeah, even if I take out clearly distinguished, I mean, the whole sentence, it doesn't seem like it's written to achieve what you're telling me they wanted to achieve.
Yeah, I don't get it
I don't know.
at all.
right. Well, you know, one of the concerns has been the use of the word artistic. That could mean anything. And so with what you're saying, someone could come in and say, well, a variety of styles on this home is artistic and it's where we are in today's world. And I think that there's some exposure to an unwanted path with the word artistic. Anything that leaves us, yeah, I think
Character.
historic
But-
really is the word we're looking for.
Historic New England port values.
I added the historic and on that last sentence, but I felt uncomfortable deleting artistic without a conversation.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I think I'm uncomfortable with artistic.
Well, we may not need this. I'm not sure we've made the determination if we need
Right.
this
Yeah,
definition
I
at all.
can take it out. We take
Yeah,
the whole
take
thing
the
out.
definition.
Sure.
I vote we take out architectural significance.
How do you feel about that, Ben?
I'm comfortable with it. I did, as we were kind of meandering through, should that be in there or not, I was trying to look on GIS and find a good parcel to talk about. And this is not a staff recommendation of this particular parcel. So I hope I don't get castigated after I share this with you. But Town Hall, we all know where it is.
Yeah.
We all know what it looks like. It was constructed according to our assessing data in 1957. So to the point of what's historic, what isn't, what process do we want structures to go through, what process do we not want structures to go through, ignoring that it is Town Hall and it is publicly owned, that structure currently does not fall within what our ordinance that's on the books today would consider historic. It is, however, within the 50-year look-back period that the National Park Service considers historic. So if we ignore who owns it, today in the district, that structure could be removed and replaced without any permitting other than the normal building permit process because it does not meet that definition of historic under our ordinance today. I don't know what the best course of action is, and I think that's worth probably talking to residents within the district as well as to what level of permitting there should or shouldn't be. But I think it's a good example to me at least of what a structure within the district that is post 1930 looks like. Because I know our minds are all going to a 1970s structure or something that definitely feels different than this structure. And I said, I hope I'm not going to get castigated, but I'm using Town Hall as a reference of a structure within the district that is built post 1930, but may or may not fall within historic guidelines as we build them.
Yeah.
So food for thought as we think about what that what historic means with a capital H. That there are certainly structures that are very visible and structures that don't look like a 1970s styled house within the district that were built post 1930. And to part of that coin, where I think you've heard from your member of the public today, is that in today's world, if Town Hall wasn't Town Hall and it was just a brick structure that existed and someone was trying to do something with it, they could demolish it with minimal permitting. But to the other end, they could also take the vinyl windows that are in Town Hall and easily replace them without going through a permitting process. And I think as we move through this, and I've shared this with staff, but not with the board, I think we'll have to just make sure that wherever this ordinance lies, that we share permitting requirements with residents within the district and make them aware that there may be processes once this is put in place that they haven't had to go through in the past.
Of course. Yeah. So are we taking out architectural / significance?
I think we should leave it.
I highlighted it for us to take out later, just so we can look through the rest of the ordinance and make sure there's no additional changes that need to be made to reflect that.
Yeah, I mean, it has no meaning in the rest of the ordinance, so it shouldn't be there
But
unless,
what happens to the rest of the sentence then?
That whole definition
whole-
will be taken
the
out.
whole definition is
Whole
gone.
definition.
Okay. Oh, okay, I see.
Do we have a definition of historic that we've created? I mean, I know there's a general speak to it, but
No.
Don't we need
Wasn't that in the
something?
underlying district? Why they exist?
It seemed to be a general concept. I just wondered if there was ever an argument to saying, well, what is historic? Is it 1980? Is it 1950?
Right, well, that's a different, yeah. We have to answer that
That was
question.
before I was.
But don't we need some sort of basis? Like what was just removed?
So do I understand this right? The way this is worded right now and the decision process would be, if this stood as it is, the intent would be, if I come in and I'm in the historic district and I want to add on another garage bay, it would have the look and feel of my current structure, regardless of what year my house was built in, because I'm in the historical district, and I would show the planning board my plans, and it would have my garage bay. And as long as I didn't change the look and feel of my current home and or if I did change it and and if it was something relevant to houses 500 feet around me, then that's okay.
Yeah.
So that will be hard to make so it's really not then a definition of a historical, we're not, I guess what I'm trying to say is we're not trying to define a house. We're trying to freeze a point in time of our town and say, as it is today, we want to keep that look and feel.
Right.
As long as you're abiding by a house view within a 500-foot radius of your building.
We're looking an
Can I
ambience.
I was gonna say, it wouldn't have to look, it could look different than the rest of your house if that's what you and your architect decided was going to fit in best, so long as it fit the neighborhood. So there has to be something in the neighborhood that suggests what you want to do in terms of the scale and the look. It doesn't have to match your federal, we've all seen additions that look great next to, they're different, and they decide it's better than trying to match. We have to have it stand out, and it's going to, as long as it fits the neighborhood, it will be fine.
And by neighborhood, we're saying a 500-foot radius within your house.
Where's the 500?
That's so.
Okay, because in visually compatible, it doesn't suggest that. It just suggests the neighborhood.
I think it was further on down.
Perhaps we could have two cutoffs. We could have the 1930s and have a 50-year. So if something was built prior to 1930, it has to retain that really historic character. But if it's more recent, it has to retain the character that it has.
So it's almost as if historic is defined as 1930 and earlier. Could that be how it would be interpreted?
Yeah, there could be a definition for homes built prior to 1930. They have to retain that character that they currently
That
have.
historic character.
Historic
building?
character. But if we want to use the 50-year
So
look back, it just has to retain the character of the existing house
Or the neighborhood.
or move, they could build something that is would be
500 feet from
relevant
your
to
house.
the 1930s or previous.
Could I make a point? We have some beautiful additions that have been done to homes that are not at all like the existing house. And I think it enhances them because it makes them look really fresh. There's a house on West Street, the second house on the right. They put a very modern garage in. The house on Main Street, that's kind of near the library. It's very long and narrow, the one that sold for $4 million. Their garage was torn down and they have a vertical sided brown barn board, 2-story huge addition but it's back of, you see it clearly from the road, but you've got the regular, I'm not sure what the old main house. There's a house on South Street that put a very lots of glass onto a sort of Greek revival Cape-ish type home that looks really nice. So we do have multiple examples of where the addition doesn't match at all. And it looks nice. Like I said, it really makes the house like, oh, look at this beautiful house. And they modernized it. Oh, I could live there. There aren't, red velvet ropes across it that
Right.
keep it looking so old. So, that's kind of a tightrope to walk there.
Well, that's a great example that you bring up on Main Street. But the heritage of that house would have had a carriage house to it
Mhm.
attached at one point.
Mhm.
Would have. And so what they've done is they've brought back some of the history into that current construction.
Yes.
And I think that that's with what Jane was saying, the idea of having, maybe 19, I'm trying to come up with a definition of historic that is, could be universal in some way that wouldn't cause an issue in trying to define it with every application. And so I wondered if, with what you were saying, if it was prior to 1930, the use of the property where it could have been a carriage house at some time, and they've kind of done a modernized carriage house, but it works. And then the 50 years, talking about in addition to that, is that the neighborhood, the feel of the neighborhood that really
Yeah.
reflects what that design should be. We
Yeah.
stepped into a different world there.
Yeah, so I think we're getting there. I think we should step back from trying to define to what we're trying to achieve. And I think, Anne Marie, what you sort of just said with Jane is what we're trying to achieve, right? So trying to maintain the 1930s and above characteristics of those homes. So if I'm in a 1930 home, I want to have that look and feel characteristic because I did fall within that zone. And if I want to add on, I want to say true, somewhat true. Janet gave us some examples where, you could stay true to the intent and yet have modern-ish, like we said, we don't want to be the material police, window police or anything like that. We just want to stay away from the sheer ultra modern look. And then to your point, anything in the historical district that's not of the 1930 or earlier vintage would have to follow the rule of, am I going to do something to my house and do I look like everything 500 or whatever the distance is, 500 feet from my property? And that's the area that I can work in. What would be wrong with that?
That solves the problem, what Dan was concerned about, that you could tear down a 1930s house and build, a Brady Bunch house.
Yeah, well,
No, you
I'm
could-
not saying that you would have to accept that as that's one of the things that could happen. Right, it
But,
still would have to look and feel
Yeah,
like
but
the other homes in the area.
if
so
we,
we may avoid getting something that's just completely out of character. But it doesn't protect but it's the people's property too. Right? And they should be able to do, if they spent a lot of money on the house and they decide that's not what they like, they should be able to do what they want. But if we can keep it so it looks like the other areas in the town, so it's not, say, devaluating the other properties because it's completely different and it doesn't fit with
So-
the town.
Okay, so then you're not on so what I heard you just say, Dan, is that there's not this two trees of the decision tree. It's basically, if you fall in the historical district, if we were the planning board, right? And people came in front of us and they're in the historical district, we would say, oh, you're in the historical district. The architecture that we see right now, you're going to tear down your house. Okay. Then we would expect the plan that they would come in front of us would have the same look and feel of the
Right.
neighborhood 500 feet around them. That is what we're looking for.
But yeah, I think that would be the simplest.
So if they had if Captain Lord Mansion house got taken down and just say there was a Brady Bunch house within the 500 feet, that is the look and feel of that neighborhood that we're taking a snapshot
included in
of
it.
the historical district. And for some reason, somebody had a crush on Greg Brady and wanted to build that house.
Well, I don't think if there was one house that was an outlier,
Yeah.
that any group of reasonable people would conclude that's the look and feel of the neighborhood. I would think they would conclude that house over there is probably not historic and doesn't represent the look and feel. And if you drove by, you'd probably say, what's that house doing here?
So,
As opposed to,
so you would add a caveat then that said houses within the 500, a 500-foot radius that had a New England Port Village look and feel characteristic. So you would add that to the nomenclature.
You could add
I
something
think
like
the
that.
visual compatibility does it.
So you're not gonna have arguments from somebody saying, well, there's there's the Brady Bunch house there and
Bet-
it's in.
Between
is it-
the visual relationship between nearby buildings and nearby streetscape in terms of consistency of scale of the building, height, proportion of facade, spacing, proportion of opening, roof lines, blah, blah, blah. It's a lot of, look and feel, character of the
So-
neighborhood.
So are we moving
That's on
away,
your block, essentially.
are we moving away from the idea of having two separate? But I think we got saved from some of the concerns about everybody becoming a Brady Bunch house
Yeah.
by retaining the 30s, in back, as they have to, will be held to a different standard than if a house was built after 1940.
Well, I think-
Yeah, but then we get to the problem where the Brady Bunch house is torn down and it becomes, it was built in 1950s, post-war building. And you could put anything you want there. And therefore, this whole ordinance and this whole historic district would be meaningless with respect to that building.
Right.
And I'm not sure should be our goal.
No.
And I don't know how many houses like that there are.
No, not
Can I-
any.
The people, as to your point earlier, people who can afford to live in that area really want to maintain the value of their property and not build something that doesn't have curb appeal as
Yeah.
much as something else.
Yeah, but I do think we have to plan for the future. Things are
Yeah.
changing.
Yeah,
10 years ago, there wasn't a single corporation that owned
yeah.
a house. There weren't private equity groups owning properties in town. Everything was local. Um,
Yeah, we should be thinking
and-
about somebody that wants to come in and buy a street.
Yeah,
And turn that street into something. So that's how far forward we have to be thinking here, to make sure that we maintain, because you start doing the math on some of these things and there's very creative people out there. And they're not private owners, right, to Paul's point.
Yeah.
And this is, to Jane's point, this is, Wall Street Journal front page or whatever, this is, people are building here, people are coming here. So it's not to stop people from doing that. It's within that, to maintain the look and feel. So I missed your point though, Paul. What were you?
which
So
point?
are you, the one you just made, are you saying that?
I'm saying if we had it only applied to pre-1930s buildings to go through this process, then depending upon how many there are in the district, you could have the look and feel goal completely lost, because if it's a later built house, they can do whatever they want with it, subject to all the other zoning requirements. They could put big square boxes.
Why couldn't we say the look and feel of the majority of?
No, but the house that's later built
Yeah.
wouldn't be subject to the rules.
So-
My view is everything should be subject to
Yeah, I agree.
every
Okay,
property, and the 1930 is
Okay.
immaterial for the purpose,
Okay.
for the analysis of what you can do to it.
Can I give us some context?
Please.
Cool. I think we have, at least in the what is called the Kennebunkport Historic District, the district that is downtown that we think of, that most of us are probably thinking of as we're having this conversation. we have the luxury compared to other communities of having a very detailed national park nomination form for that district, for that particular district. Both are good, but that one was very extensively surveyed. So this is only a snapshot in time, but that survey was from 1976. And if you're okay, I'll read a couple sentences of it. So this is a snapshot, but it said, most structures have apparently always been very well maintained. Most homes are in excellent condition. There are no houses or buildings which can be classified as serious intrusions into the district. Of the 147 structures at that point in time located in the district, 24 were constructed within the last 50 years, which would be from 1976 back 50 years to 1926. With the exception of 3 unobtrusive ranch-type homes, recent buildings have all been carried out in the colonial revival manner with style, scale, and choice of material, which successfully blends with the fabric of the area. So at that point in time, the National Park Service and those members of the community that were going through the survey process with the state to signify and create the historic district, it was determined that there were only 25 structures from 76 back 50 years that didn't meet the architectural style of the period of significance. And our period of significance in the district is roughly the 19th century, so 1825 to 1899. And that would be various styles of structures and the different periods of significance within those styles. So all of that was a very long-winded way of saying we may be okay if we decide that 1930 doesn't make sense and we want all structures to go within the same period of significant review, for lack of a better word, because there are so few of them, at least in this bigger district, that exist, and there are so few of them that would have a different process and would look different than what we think of when we're going through this general historic district, the Kennebunkport Historic District. Cape Arundel's a little bit different, but in general, that district also generally retains more of its character than not.
Yeah, excellent.
Cape Arundel goes to the bushes or after bushes? Do we know?
I don't know if I can tell you this. Think so, yeah.
It looks like it does include the bush compound.
And is that, not that, so after bush though, no. It's green up there, but that's just,
What are we looking at? The green stripe? No.
we're looking
That's-
at these hashes, right?
Yeah,
Okay. So it's not the other side of this.
yeah, that's interesting. Just a little bit.
That's not the flood zone? Or
Yeah,
the-
that's where the flood.
So the green hash marks are the Cape Arundel Historic District. And if Nadia were to keep zooming out in yellow, I think. Blue. And blue hash marks, which gets hard to see as you kind of zoom out.
Oh, yeah.
That's the other historic district, which is the Kennebunkport Historic District.
And how far do we go out, Nadia? I lost myself.
Okay, so at the Cape Arundel is, of course.
So how far am I, where
Almost
was
up there.
River Road?
Comes up to the golf course. It's higher. River Road's a little bit.
Oh, River Road's up there.
Yeah.
The cemetery, so I'm on North Lake,
Yeah,
right?
cemetery's down. The whole
Okay.
cemetery.
Okay, and village parcel,
Yes.
is outside of it. Not all of it, you know, the front end.
The front.
Okay. Sorry. Huh, okay. Interesting.
I do have a question that in all of our discussion, we seem to be looking at these properties as single-family residences. And the concern was with the upcoming state laws with regards to perhaps having 4 units in one building. Is that incorporated in our conversation tonight? Are we going to address something that became basically 4 unit in one building in the historic district? Is that something that we need to discuss?
It's just basic, to me, it's just to me, it's just what the art of the possibility is on a piece of property, right? Given state law, setbacks, size of lot, blah, blah, blah. So whether or not they put 4 units inside, or if it's one family home, to the planning board, that, I'll say that's irrelevant,
Okay.
tongue in cheek. On the look and feel side of it, it should be irrelevant, because they're just looking around saying, okay, you
Doesn't
know.
fit.
They wouldn't even
know.
have to go to the planning board.
Yeah, so if they said if they were taking down a house and putting up 4 in the historical district, it's not the fact that there's 4 houses there, that's by density law, right? Just say it could happen. And then I think the planning board would just look at the look and the feel of those 4, given this, saying, okay, 500 feet around you, if that's what we're going with, does that have the same characteristics? You know,
Okay.
look and feel.
So we don't have to distinguish it being 4 separate units as opposed to one property containing 4 units.
No.
Okay, thank you.
No, if we have the historical district that covers that and it requires them to go, you know, there's a set point where it goes to your department, and there's a set point that goes to the planning board. Can that stick even with the requirement in the law saying it had to be 5 or more?
I'm waiting for the Maine Office of Community Affairs to go through rulemaking on LD 2173, and I'll be reading their rules and then verifying that and most likely asking for clarification. In the previous iterations of the statutes, the Maine Office of Community Affairs was comfortable with a control measure like a historic overlay district or design standards being something that would be still being able to elevate review of those particular aspects to a body that wasn't staff.
Okay.
So getting really far into the weeds, what that could look like if we move forward with this process would be that larger structure that was being modified with a new change of use to a 3 or 4 unit from a single family. There would be code aspects that would need to possibly be added. There may be new entryways, new doors, new windows, things like that. This process would dictate what those new windows and doors would look like. So theoretically, it may be harder for someone to modify the exterior of the structure where they just have a regular fire rated storm door from Home Depot, and they may instead have to have a wooden door or a door that matches the architectural significance of the structure or the related structures around it. And I think to me, that's the thing that would be the most comparable to kind of, I think, where your thought process was going.
Thank you.
So you're going back to the town hall, if somebody were, that were to be sold, say we decided to build a new town hall and that were to be sold, that structure could be renovated and still look like the existing town hall, or torn down and look more or less like that with a, does it have a flat roof? The town hall, does it have a flat roof?
No,
No,
it's covered. Finished.
but it doesn't have a second floor. So, you know, it could just continue to look like the town hall building, or it could be torn down, and we're talking about what they could build if they were to tear it down.
It's a big lot.
Correct. And again, this is not any, the committee nor staff are recommending that as a actual project that would happen. It was just a good structure that we all know about to talk about, for tonight's exercise.
We're not invading on anyone's privacy.
Right.
Public property. Right, they could make it look like something.
We could make it
something
look
else
like
that's that's
anything
around.
500 feet around it,
Yeah,
which is
The bank.
or like itself.
like the bank. It could have a drive-through now. Yay. It could look like.
Guess you could have the McDonald's there.
That's good.
Mm.
Got a drive-through and it's brick.
Oh, can we have the
Behind the
golden
little
arches?
arches.
Are there rules about things like the golden
Signs.
arches in Kennebunkport?
You do have
Can we
sign ordinance.
And we don't have a Wendy's or a McDonald's
Isn't
or
that great?
what?
Isn't that great?
But is that just by happenstance or is there some?
Well, there's a commercial district,
Yeah.
right? The commercial district is a very small district in the port.
Yeah.
The rest is residential.
We don't have anything that specifically excludes that type of establishment, but it so far hasn't really come up.
It's also pretty slow in the off season here.
Right.
I remember hearing somewhere that the town didn't allow drive-throughs for food.
Yeah.
Like a Starbucks drive-through or a McDonald's drive-through or anything.
I haven't seen anything in our ordinance that specifically excludes drive-throughs.
I
If
just think
someone could
you,
make it work on the lot, I think that it
yeah,
would be
I just think you
permitted.
can't
It's-
actually physically do it.
I'm thinking the market supports it.
Well, maybe the
We don't have
town
room
hall,
on-
they could
We
do
don't have the
it.
highway.
Okay, let's keep going.
We don't have a train station.
Thank you.
Run out of time.
Between the bays and the fire stations.
So I left these two highlighted more for staff purposes. We'll be sitting down with our codes, with our code officer, tomorrow, potentially to chat about where tonight went and then to have him give some recommendations. Both building and demolition are, borrowed from other ordinances. And I purposely left the building definition, because it does talk about things that aren't structures. There are some instances, especially in the Cape Arundel district, where I think it makes sense to possibly have this in there for purposes of cemeteries and other things. However, it is not the standard building definition that is within our already within our land use code, and it is not the standard definition that you would find in the state's building code. And I know that that our code enforcement officer is going to have some heartburn about that.
So I don't, I got confused on this one too. What would this help us? What are we trying to achieve by putting this in? I didn't follow.
Which building?
The
Yeah, 'cause
definition of building.
Yeah, building, because we're saying, okay, it includes cemeteries and parks, but we're trying to do a look and feel, so I was
That
getting.
anything built on a space that doesn't currently have a building still has to fit the look and feel.
So it would be,
This
so
would be a building lot then,
correct, and it would
so not a
effectively
building.
have additional controls over locations that have a lot that in that 500-foot radius has non-buildings within it, so parks or cemeteries or other open space provisions.
So is this to what Liz was saying, is that, say somebody bought the park and they were going to put a building up, so we're saying that that park is included in this ordinance because it's in the historical district.
Correct.
I think that that definition of building then got me confused, because then it's more about what lots, what is included in a building lot. Because what you're doing is defining a building lot, right, not a building, because you're saying a building lot could be a park. And if it's in the historical district, then it has to follow these guidelines, right? Versus I was getting.
So if you're going to put something up on a park,
It's
It
gotta
has
be,
to, it has to be consistent.
right.
It would be subject to the same, whether it's a public park or,
Yeah, so it's like what's included in this. It's not just the buildings in the historical so now I understand this. This is building, this is actually the area that is being, that it's relevant to is not just the physical buildings that sit here, but it's actually land masses such as cemeteries and parks.
And I had done some basic digging of where this had come out of some of the National Park Service guidelines. And generally, you would retain that particular definition if you have historic cemeteries. So there are some cemeteries across the country, more in the south, but other places as well. And we have them as well. And I thought it may be helpful, but I know that our code officer is not going to like it. But we do have in the Cape Arundel nomination form, there is a designation about a couple of cemeteries. And it references them as specific features within the district and talks about when the gravestones were dated in those particular cemeteries. I don't think it harms the district or us if we don't designate that as something in particular, but I think there's certainly a chance to be able to have the conversation tonight about whether that definition, which includes those cemeteries and parks provision, would be beneficial to have other than the general building definition, which would focus on a structure, a building that we know is a building, a house of some kind.
So I guess I go down to the well again. So I'm still confused. So are we saying that we want to retain, so different from what Liz said, we're saying that we want to retain the look and feel of of our cemeteries in our historical district or our parks in our historical district. So it's not that somebody's gonna buy a park and put a building on it, put a house on it. And we want that house to look in the 500 feet because we're counting that as a historical district space. We want to actually preserve the historical feel of the cemetery.
It would be an additional added control beyond any of the other zoning ramifications of could you build on a cemetery or not.
or like the park, I don't know what the park's name is, the one,
Rotary?
no, in the district,
The little park there.
so let's say somebody decides.
Granny's Green.
Yeah, we need a bandstand there. And everybody says somebody donates some money to put a bandstand there. It would seem that this definition would suggest that, yeah, you could put a bandstand there, but it would have to be something that would be consistent with the neighborhood. It would have to fit into the neighborhood. It couldn't be, something super modern, let's say. It would have to be.
That's what you're trying to do here.
Correct.
Okay, got it. Okay.
I'm not sure that fits. I think we could talk about that, and include that as a thing, but not necessarily call a cemetery or parks a building. Right, we could have that separate.
Well, the structure is being called.
And just talk about the structures that could potentially be put on those.
Well, that's what it says, doesn't it?
Well, it says
Refers to all structures and places, and places.
Places, yeah, I think the
So
So
maybe
that-
we don't need in places.
places.
But I think I think we need to include the cemeteries as something that would be under the purview of our historic district.
Why wouldn't we put that in the definition at the beginning where we had the Kennebunk and Kennebunkport historical districts or Arundel and up in the top?
Well, they're already included,
They're included.
I know, so that's why I'm confused on why we're.
but it's just saying they're included already in the historic districts. This would put design standards on them. If you put a building on those places that are not traditional houses, they would have to comply with the
Standards.
standards.
And I think your park example is the most basic example because it would be retaining those types of uses still, but it would be either a principal structure or an accessory structure that was placed on a park, or if there was a new structure, a new building placed on a cemetery lot, things like that.
Yeah, mausoleum,
I think
let's
we-
say,
Yeah, I think we could address that separately and just take the places out of this definition.
well, I think you have to cover it. I think it's a good catch.
Yeah. Just the
To think about it.
Yes.
Demolition is highlighted because it is not the definition that's currently in our ordinance. But it is what the National Park Service recommends. And it includes that last part of it, which is removal of any portion of an existing building or structure or any related attachment, appurtenance or accessory to that building. And if we keep this, we would probably need to define what an appurtenance is, and there's a definition from the National Park Service that I didn't include, but we would include if we were doing that. And that would be, I can look it up, but that would be a change from what the current definition of demolition is.
So the current definition of demolition is what?
Is down below, right?
Yeah.
Or demo, it's on unnumbered page.
That was, you just, wait, you just passed it. It was up above. There it is. Is that what it is?
Demolition or removal or of any building. Is essentially what the, right.
And I think it was in there and I might have removed it, but
But it wouldn't apply
Are-
to, if you have a garage on the side or a barn and you wanted to get rid of the barn, it might not apply.
our current definition is the demolition, which is the act of destroying or pulling down a building or structure.
So does that, if you take down a garage, it would apply
I believe so.
currently?
Is this a requirement of a home that's on the National Registry by federal law?
So it is probably worth talking about that for 30 seconds and then coming back to our ordinance.
Okay.
But the National Register is not any control mechanism, so it doesn't have any oomph behind it. There's no law that says if a house is listed or if a house is within the district that's listed on the register that they have to do anything in particular. It's intended to help us have this conversation and create local control. And then it also ties into the possibility to utilize historic tax credits if it's a non-residential project or a non-single family home or duplex project. So if it's a commercial project by the federal definition, meaning multiple multi-units or a project that is traditionally commercial, it could tap into historic tax credits. But there is technically not a control mechanism in the federal requirements, and there's also unfortunately not a tax purpose wise financial benefit to houses that are owned by as a single family use or a
So
non-commercial
if I'm a
use.
developer and I want to buy a historic home and turn it into 40 units, I can get tax credit?
Correct.
Cool.
Yeah, that's,
I believe if they were proposing that here, there would be, that process goes through conversation with the state, with our state Historic Preservation Commission and the Federal National Park Service. And having been through this process in other municipalities, I would guess that there might be some angst on the federal side of when our national historic districts were created, that it is now roughly 50 years past that period. So the viewpoint occasionally has been, you need to review everything and ensure that the district still has that historic character, because now the last time we did it, structures at that point in time would be considered historic to that 50-year window. But I think because our district is pretty well maintained and has kept most of its character, if someone were proposing that, the state would back us up and say, we don't have to do that process.
So are we saying we would have the other demolition definition versus that one in the ordinance?
So I would recommend utilizing this definition because I think it's a little bit more clear, as the planning board would be making that determination and not the code enforcement officer, that those are all the things that include demolition versus the removal or tearing down of a structure. But again, we are going to be talking to our code enforcement officer tomorrow, and we can bring that to your September meeting and let you know what his viewpoint is on that as well.
That one looks good, material.
I did have a quick note about the strikeout of the colors of a building. When we had the joint meeting with the select board, we did hear very clearly from them that they expressly did not want to have any regulation about the colors of buildings in the historic district. And I saw this pop up a couple of times, so I just wanted to give a quick reminder to the committee that this specific part of the ordinance about the colors of buildings was actually asked for by the select board to not put any restrictions on what colors were allowed for buildings in the zone.
I think that there should be some review of the colors.
I do too.
But we were told, no.
I mean, the committee is welcome to put that in there, but I think it just as forewarning, it might get bounced back by the select board for that specific change.
I mean, if you look at historic colors and any and all paint supply companies, there's hundreds of colors.
Yeah.
It's really not restricting at all. What it's preventing is fuchsia and bright orange
I
and
like Frank.
um,
You can find a door easy.
there's hundreds
Yeah.
of available colors and historic colors.
I think most people would stick to the historic colors. I mean, even the company will come in and probably make, they're trying to sell. If a company came in and took a lot and built 40 condos, much to our disdain, they're still gonna make them look beautiful because they're trying to get $1.5 million for it. Right? So they won't have.
But an individual who really happens to like fuchsia.
Yeah, well,
I saw
Oh,
fuchsia
okay.
trim on a house the
You
other
could
day,
offer to
not
repaint it
not
for
here.
them.
What?
you can offer to repaint it for them. Free. It's a color piece will just get knocked out. But it's a symbol of being too restricted. So I think we should.
So ultimately, this was a specific direction from the select board,
Yeah.
which is why I'm highlighting it to you guys.
I'm fine with this. I hear what you're saying.
I don't think there's a problem with reviewing the colors. And if it seems out of place, noting it. But I would think that, it's probably not going to
We're
be a
trying,
big
the
issue.
ordinance has to give direction to the planning board.
Yeah.
And so you don't want them to note something.
Absolutely.
The ordinance needs to give Well, then decisionable things.
Are we at least saying that the color, in addition to the height and the windows and blah, blah, that the color also has to be in the look and feel of the neighborhood? If we're not restricting to specific colors.
Oh, but here, it's talking about
are we
material
at
change.
least saying that color has to be visually
Yeah, consistent, compatible.
or whatever.
Jane, it was in here, the colors of a building is called out as something that is not considered a material change. And so it was just the first time it came up in the ordinance, the issue of specific color regulation. So this seemed like a good place to bring it up.
But by striking it out, you are calling it a material change.
Right, so I unstruck it out. Someone had added a suggestion to strike it out, and so I added it
Well,
back in.
maybe you should strike it, because it's talking about, it's not considered a material change.
Right.
It could be a material change. I think color is something that you,
So the select board again.
Liz's suggestion.
So this select board, so you guys can put it in because it's going to come in front of the select board. The select board, so the value of meeting with the select board on this was the select board, you heard exactly from the select board's mouths about what they would like to see, which is something light. We don't want to be historical police. We want to maintain a look and feel. We don't, and one of them said, and specifically on color, and no one pushed back on the select board. So the committee is free to do and send up whatever you want, you agree to do.
well, what this is saying is the choice of color is not a material change. That's what
Right.
this is saying.
That's correct.
No. As struck out, it says it is a material change.
It was struck out. I have unstruck it. So it,
Oh,
So maybe you should strike it out again because it is a material change.
Well, is there another way to handle it? I think Liz's suggestion, can we put it in as one of the factors in visually compatible? Add color in there as part of the scheme and the rhythm
Right,
of character
along with
and
all the
not,
other things we're
Oh, and-
talking about.
As,
so they're allowed to evaluate it and look at it.
as long
Um,
as you're fine with it being the visual character as it would be in this case in 2027. Because it would be, once we have moved this through the process, the voters have hopefully approved it because we've spent a lot of time on it. And it becomes real, that would be a snippet, unless we defined it as a particular period of time. It would be as of July of 2027, that if a pink house exists, then a pink house could exist next to a pink house.
Well, can't two things be true at the same time? We could say a modification, like the color, is not considered a material change. We can say that, but we can also say that the colors that they choose have to fit the character of the neighborhood within 500 feet.
So what could happen then is,
And it will evolve over time.
well, what could happen then is that because paint color's not a material change, and this is what we wanted people to be able to do. We wanted people to be able to replace windows.
Yeah,
We wanted people to be able to paint their house and do simple things without coming to the planning board. We didn't want to be.
right. They go from one historic color to another historic color and no harm, no foul.
But we didn't want them to have to, so a person having a historical home, you just say, okay, if you tear something down, you go to the code officer and because you don't know, right? You don't know you're in the historical district. Some people don't know. Some people that buy in won't know. So they go to the code officer and say, hey, I want to replace my garage. Okay. And I also, so they go and they replace their garage. And then in the meantime, they've already repainted their house because they didn't know that they shouldn't have. If we say that that's a material change. So, and we don't have, part of the reason why the board does not want to put color in is because we want to do a look and feel. We don't have, and nor will we create a employee base that will go around and drive our streets and see who's painting or not, because you don't have to take a permit out to paint your house. So if we wanted to do historical colors, we would have to have a permitting process for these houses in the historical district to be able to paint your house. Because then you would have to prove you're using a historical color. And that's where the board didn't want to go.
So a house gets painted
Any color.
bright pink
Mhm.
tomorrow. No one pulls out a permit. And they're not, if they're doing a general renovation, a big project, they've come into the town to get building permits. And in that context, it would seem appropriate to know what's happening there. If someone just decides pink is my color, I just watched that movie, whatever, and it's going to be pink. To me,
I'm okay with it. I mean, if they can paint any color they want.
to me, you should paint it as a color that fits into the neighborhood.
But,
Just like you want the roof line to be,
but if you had already had, so this is the decision process. Whatever you put into what is a material change, then that thing, if it's beyond the scope of what is normal, like tearing something down, you got to go to the code office. Putting in a window, do you have the code office putting in a window?
It depends on if you're making any structural changes to.
Yeah,
the
so if you're
buildings.
not making structural changes, we don't want these people to have to come into the code office for putting in a new window, right? 'Cause we're
what if you
putting them all-
said the colors of a building that are not historic colors? So,
But my point is when whatever is in material change now has to become something that is permitting. So now you're causing more people to come in. Everyone in the historical district who wants to paint their house has to get a permit.
No,
Because they have
I'm-
to prove that they're in the historical color range.
no, that's not the way it would
No,
it would happen. If they change if they change the color from white to another historic color, there is nothing they have to do. If they change it from white to pink, then that would be a problem
But
because they have not chosen a color that's consistent
I
with the
think-
character of the neighborhood.
I think what Mary Beth is saying is somebody has a house and they want to paint their house and they've decided to paint it pink. So they go out, they hire somebody.
Right, I
They,
understand the
they get
problem.
it painted pink and they're not aware that anybody would have an issue with that.
right.
And they
they're-
don't
they're not in
realize-
They're in the historical district, they're not aware of that. So now so they spent $60,000 painting their huge house pink for whatever reason. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but, then the code officer comes in and says, oh, I'm sorry, you're in the historical district. You had to stay with the historical color and this does not fall in the color. So now that person has to repaint their house. So you actually have to have a trigger point where there is some permitting process because you don't want to have people fall into that trap, right? And so
You
the-
think you can paint your house
you
without
should-
having to go
it's
to the-
not a normal thing, right?
but isn't it just a matter of education? Future people who buy in the historic district, their realtors need to tell them this is this house. in the
I
historic
would
district.
love it to
And
be a
current
simple thing of
houses-
education, Liz, but I have learned, we used to say tire tracks on my back
Yeah,
because there is no ability that you can never communicate enough, have enough public meetings. You can't do enough to have informed people.
You can
I-
teach, but you can't
There is
guarantee
a part
that
that
there's
everyone
been
has to
learning.
understand
where they're buying.
Yeah, and I just don't think
Understand what you're
the,
buying and getting into,
Yep.
and if you miss
I
something.
mean, if you guys,
There's
That's
no
tough,
point in us
but-
doing this if
but-
people
well-
don't understand that.
But I think paint is something.
but
Paint-
there's
needs to
the
be-
normal trigger process of what you're trying to do is somebody demos the house, somebody
Right.
wants to put a garage on. Everyone knows you gotta go pull a permit for that. No contractor's gonna touch your house if you don't, they need a permit. They know that. So that's the norm. So the board was looking at the things that fall into the normal trigger process for permitting. And then code office, planning board, That's our normal processes. No new things have to be created. We're not. Okay, you could have a road person that tears down a structure. That is just, I'm not sure what contractor would ever sign up for that, but, you would just never say you wouldn't, but something like painting, I understand where you're coming from. I'm just looking at it from the implementation standpoint, and then is it worth it? So if you guys, as a committee, I don't want to sway you, as a committee, if you believe strongly that you want to put this in there and you have your argument, then put it in there and bring it to the board. This is your committee. So if you guys feel you are representing, the community, and if you feel that this is something that you feel is, has a good process, or, Ben can say, or, say what he thinks the process should be. But I think, I'm just telling you where the board was coming from.
Yeah, I get that about the permitting piece, but it happened on my street. I'm not in historic district, so there was nothing we could do. But literally somebody painted their house, and there's only 5 houses on my street. The first one that you have to drive by to get to any of the others, bright orange. Bright orange.
I like orange. They should be able to paint the house the way they want. I'm not for paint. I don't think it should be on here. I'm gonna rely on the judgment of the people that own the homes, that they're gonna paint it to look nice.
Ah,
And if we
I
have,
thought that too.
but if we have orange, someday someone's gonna buy that, and they're probably not gonna like orange, and they'll paint it whatever the color it needs to be painted, which could be changed very easily, right? They can do it themselves.
I think
30 years later, when they
But
sell the
the
house.
structural piece, flat roof, or it has or the.
I don't know. I mean, historical
the word I
district
had to
is
look up,
historical for a
fermentation.
reason.
I had to look that up, and I had no idea what that was.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Right,
that's.
so the fermentation of the architecture.
I had to look up a couple words, which
That's why
is
I put
good.
this extra words in there, just.
I said I purposely left that in so that we could talk about it if we got that far.
So that's a part that's very expensive to change. And so, right, if someone were to build a home completely different and put the Brady Bunch house where never there was a Brady Bunch house in the neighborhood, right? So those are things that we really need to have permitted. The other stuff, I mean, even lighting fixtures, to me, to an extent, I would leave it to the judgment of the owners to put in lighting fixtures that are.
Yeah, I think what you're gonna see, so like
I wouldn't want big spotlights that light up the whole neighborhood.
right,
Right, but having nice, if they went from bronze to black, or black to silver, whatever they felt was appropriate for the color of the home, that's fine with me too, without having to get to them.
yeah, I think that's where you're going to see,
I think we get a lot of pushback from the townspeople, period.
well, you're gonna get some pushback from the board too.
But yeah.
Right, and so that's where I
But if we
think,
convince the board that
Right.
we would get pushback from the townspeople,
Yeah.
because they voted against all this in like 96 or whatever.
and was it when 96,
I
how,
wasn't here then.
what was what?
I wasn't here then, but I know it got voted down. I mean, we have it right in our plan. We talked about it, not passing.
I can't hear you. I
In,
think-
in 90, I think it was 96 or in the 90s, the townspeople voted against having the historical district requirements. Right? That's why we don't have something right now. But the reason why we're thinking about this is all because the state is enforcing something on us, and we're trying to somehow manage that and prevent the developers from taking advantage of it and putting something in there that would ruin the character of our town. That's really the goal.
And thank you. And I was about to say, and it's worth referencing for due diligence of legal purposes that it has been a part of our comprehensive plan in many of our comprehensive plan editions. So as the comprehensive plan has been renewed or we've gone through the comprehensive planning process, either ensuring the integrity of the historic districts or creating a historic district actual ordinance provision have been part of that.
That part.
And for my purposes, to make our conversation feel better as we go through the public hearing process, that would be where we would be leaning on, is that the comprehensive plan has talked about historic districts in some capacity for
Sure,
4 or 5 iterations of it.
sure. But we haven't got one passed yet, so,
Yeah,
you know, it's a piece, right? That's our challenge.
I mean, if it helps it pass, I guess, leave out the color. But if it gets on Hannah's thing, I'm moving.
Are you aware of the 2012?
Hmm?
Are you aware of the 2012 discussion of this type of thing?
I can't, I'm sorry, I
Sorry.
can't hear.
I'll just, it's real short lit from
Yeah.
the internet. And $8,000 was allocated in the municipal budget in 2012 for a committee to study and draft a local historic overlay district. During development and public hearing phases leading up to the 2012 comprehensive plan, property owners expressed significant concern over property restrictions. Recognizing the pushback, the board acknowledged the lack of public support and dropped the implementation budget.
right.
So I'm just saying there's
Yeah.
historically been
Right,
challenged in getting any.
true, but we have a different,
So I would-
Different change circumstances.
Light and all of
Right.
that, whatever you can do to.
right. But the purpose behind it now is the state has mandated change that could impact both our growth area and any lots that are on city sewer and water.
I hear you. That doesn't change my opinion.
And I've heard that from others, but we have a history of developers that find ways to take opportunities and make a lot of money on it.
And that
So that
discussion
this-
will happen and maybe people, that discussion will happen and maybe people will see it in a different light.
Yeah.
So,
I just want to make one comment about house values. I've lived in 2 historic districts and abutting the country's oldest historic district,
Which was,
Greenwich Village. And the property values and the attractiveness of those neighborhoods are the highest. And the properties are clearly cared for with great care and great expense. But the houses sell for the highest houses and, anything in the district. One was an apartment building and, so it itself wasn't very historic, but it was in a historic district. But the people want to live there. People want to keep the properties and are attracted to it and are willing to pay the highest dollar. And you walk outside a district and you can see there's a difference in, maybe the best neighborhoods were chosen to create these, the most historic to begin with. But they're seen as a positive, not as a negative, and they increase house values, not diminish them. I realize you have to up.
Greenwich Village, but yes, I agree, but I don't know the benefits. It's not as big.
I'm just giving a different view.
Yeah.
And you expressed your view, and I appreciate that.
Yes.
And I don't want the public to think that this automatically is going to mean there's going to be less buyers and house values are going to go down, which is, I think, what you represented.
Now, I want to be clear. I don't know what the future holds. I think that's a possibility and I think we should consider that. This isn't close to being what a large city has and the mass that it has and the history that has. This is very different. It's much tinier and it can change very quickly because there's not as much there. So yes, I completely get and believe that there are places where it helps. I don't know that it helps here. But again, we'll have the discussion when all of this comes forward. So.
thank you.
Places become popular and not popular. Some places stay popular forever. This could fade, especially because there are other issues with the town. Tourism, over tourism, crowding, problems. There are a lot of problems in the historic district that affect the happiness of the people that live in the historic
sure.
district right now. So I hear you. Thank you.
Cool. We're over our witching hour. So, we have to wrap up. So we didn't get to any further discussion on this. I don't want to just close it. I'm happy to stay till 5 minutes. Any other discussion on this topic? All right, so we're gonna have to take this up again at our next meeting. And we'll have to have further discussions on LD 2173 then.
We don't have to do any discussion on that, other than, I think many of you are aware of our timing deadlines for the LD 2173 provisions. Our process, for all intents and purposes, will need to be wrapped up in January. So we'll have a big lift this fall. So just kind of putting that on your radar. And not to also complicate things, but the state's rulemaking process should be kicking off on LD 2173 very soon. I would expect that to go through its motions within the next 2 or 3 weeks. If there's an update on that, I'll share that with you at your next meeting.
Okay.
But that process won't be done. They won't have adopted their rule until roughly December something. So what we will be using that conversation on is what I can gather from the draft provisions that they would set up for the rule, as well as what was in the presentation that the joint select board and this committee received in June. So we'll have a good framework, but there probably will be things in the November or December timeline that I will quickly rush to you and say, hey, this has changed. We need to talk about it now.
Yep, good.
All right, if we stick with our normal schedule, it will be the 1st and 15th. You here? I will be traveling. I'll try to join remotely.
I haven't looked at my calendar yet, but is it the 15th? Is
Yeah,
that-
1st and 15th.
Um,
And the
Probably.
the other option would be to see if we can move it to the 8th and the 22nd,
That
which
would
would
be
be the
better.
2nd and 4th Tuesdays. Is that doable? I'm assuming the rooms are available.
The 1st and the 15th are better for me. I'm gonna be gone the 24th. I think. Is that what you're doing?
24th. Yeah, the 8th and the 22nd would be the other two.
Oh,
Right.
Okay.
so the 1st and the 15th.
Good ad, Mike.
Well, if the committee members can't meet, then it's not a,
I won't be here either one.
okay. I will, we'll try to figure out this. staff
I'll be
number.
here.
Okay. Let's leave it at the 1st and the 15th as normally scheduled unless we do something. Okay.
I make a
Awesome.
motion, we adjourn.
So move.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all.